In the weather this afternoon, a very strong subtropical jet across the southeastern U.S. and in the Midwest, a broad upper-level low making its way slowly eastward. For the second day in a row, the hottest place in the world, Marble Bar, Australia, with 114 degrees. There's a look at some of the terrain around Marble Bar. The world's cold spot up there on the Greenland ice cap up at 10,000 feet, Summit Camp reporting minus 71 degrees Fahrenheit. And there you go, Summit Camp. That looks quite a bit like Antarctica. Okay, checking out our weather this afternoon. We are still contending with that big occlusion in the Midwest region. The center of the low has moved from the Kansas City area over the past 24 hours into northeastern Missouri. And there's been enormous spiraling of the mass fields, the moisture. Let me just show you the satellite imagery. So we bring this back to Christmas. We had cold, dry advection into Texas, warm, moist advection around the other side up into the Corn Belt. And watch what happens between the 25th and today. You're going to see this spiraling come together right there over Kansas City and eventually drift eastward into Missouri. And in the process, we've had a lot of that dry air wrapping around. You can see that surging north and then around and then back on the other side and just spiraling up and wrapping. Very impressive. We can even see that on the precipitable water fields. So there's what we have right now. Not quite as impressive as the satellite loop, but if you look at that pattern, kind of spirals around right like that, that's going to be the moisture axis, and then the dry axis. Let's try a different color. There we go. And that spirals around on the other side. So the thing is really wrapped up. However, instead of fully occluding, we are seeing some renewed baroclinicity on the south side. That's going to be in this zone right here. We're pulling up 60s from Alabama and Mississippi and contrasting with those 30s out there in Oklahoma. So sometimes these occlusions do pick up a second life, and they don't fully occlude until they head up into the northern latitudes. So we'll give you a look at the upper air structure. This is 925 millibars, about 3,000 feet. There's the low pressure area right there in Missouri at 850 millibars, pretty much in the same place. At 700 millibars, about 10,000 feet, there's the low pressure area. And you can see the temperatures are going down to minus 14 to minus 16 at that level. The 500 millibar chart shows the low in the very same area. And picking up minus 30 to minus 32, that's pretty cold for 500 millibars. The 300 millibar chart does show a slight offset, the low pressure area in Iowa, and we can see the subtropical jet down to the south, 130 knots. We had 180 yesterday, and the polar front jet coming around like that, so that is where the jets are coupling. And at 250 millibars, about 34,000 feet, we do pick up the stronger winds. Looks like 165 over the Blue Ridge Mountains and 170 at Jackson. And at 200 millibars, a little bit of weakening, but definitely showing the subtropical jet. Not as much evidence of the polar front jet. The overall jet stream pattern this morning does show the northern stream going well up to the north, up into northern Canada and through Newfoundland. The southern stream located down in this region, coupling with that subtropical jet, and there's our cutoff low right there in between. And if you want to go up a little bit higher, this is 100 millibars. We don't show these charts hardly at all, but this is up at about 55,000 feet, getting into that stratosphere. There's 10 millibars up at about 30 kilometers. Big vortex across Novaya Zemlya. That's a little island right there. They used to do nuclear testing. In fact, that Tsar Bomba, the strongest nuclear weapon ever detonated, was on that island. And this is as high as we can go, 1 millibar up at about 45 kilometers, showing that very strong jet 250 knots across Russia, and a large polar vortex. Now, when we have sudden stratospheric warming, this completely inverts and we have high pressure in the poles and the circulation reverses. Maybe we'll get to see that this year. It only happens about once every few years, so we'll just have to wait and see. In the northeastern U.S., rain. You can see some convective anvils right there in northern Pennsylvania up into New York. I didn't see any lightning flashes, but definitely quite a bit of heavy precip. They are looking for about 1.5 to 2 inches around Philadelphia and parts of New Jersey. And the soils are saturated there, not much capacity to take extra precipitation, so that will be a problem. The reason for all that rain? The remnants of an occluded front, and of course that implies the existence of a moisture axis, and we saw that earlier, so plenty of moisture available to get that precipitation going. Now, the true tropical air located off the coast of Florida, you can see the dew points in that area are in the 60s, and drier air north of this frontal boundary. The satellite imagery for the southeastern U.S. does show evidence of that surface low off the coast of North Carolina, and we've also got the clouds associated with the subtropical jet. So the axis of that jet running about like that, and of course we have the polar front jet bound up with that as well. In the central U.S., well, yesterday we had quite a few warnings. Blizzard conditions all through this area right here. Fortunately, most of those advisories have dropped. We are left with a winter weather advisory in the Goodland, Kansas area, up to Ogallala and the Sand Hills of Nebraska. Some residual mixed precipitation is possible, and we do see snow falling at Goodland this afternoon. The Q vector charts for this evening do confirm that the stronger upper-level lift has shifted into the eastern Midwest region, and of course a sliver down there in Georgia and Florida. On the other side, downward vertical motion, but that does not preclude shallow areas of lift, and we do have some of that going on in the Dakotas and into the high plains of Colorado and Texas. There's the satellite imagery for this afternoon showing the cold core system in Missouri. Some convective cloud fields, mostly in eastern Missouri up to Columbia. And on the other side, we've got the synoptic scale subsidence. Still a few patches of upper-level lift. Let me shift up to the north. You can get a better look at that. And that's focusing on the area around Goodland and North Platte, all the way up into the Pierre, South Dakota area. It actually looks pretty good in the southwestern U.S., fair skies, a little bit of cirrus in Arizona up to Las Vegas. But you can see all of the snow there in the central Rockies up into Wyoming. And we've got another system marching onto the California coast. Let me pull that up. There you go. That's a new front surging eastward. And some of those convective clouds are making it to the Sierras at this hour. Bands of convection all the way down the coast into the San Francisco area, and quite a bit of instability further to the west. That's associated with the cold air advection south and west of the surface low. The surface analysis does show a strong pressure gradient on the coast right now. Rough conditions continue for the California beaches, high surf advisories through Saturday night. And getting up into the Monterey area, they've got a high surf warning through Friday due to large breaking waves of 30 feet. Wind advisories from San Francisco all the way up to the redwood forests, and we pick up more high surf warnings in southwestern Oregon. There we could see large breaking waves up to 35 feet. Heading north into Alaska, a frontal system around Prince Rupert and Ketchikan, and we've got that warm advection pattern in place. Heading further up north, a high-pressure area around Yukon. This is a cold Arctic high. You can see the temperatures are in the minus 20s to minus 10s in many areas, and we had minus 40s yesterday in parts of the Alaskan interior. Elsewhere around the Arctic, We've got a weather system moving through the Northwest Territories, but temperatures are kind of on the mild side, about 10 degrees to 20, and this time of year that is rather warm. Most of the truly cold air is found in western Baffin Island up to Elamir Island, minus 30 up there at Eureka. They've been running about minus 30 to minus 35 over the past several days. The Canadian prairies looking rather warm. They had downslope conditions yesterday. There is a lee-side trough from west of Edmonton around Valley View down towards Calgary. And looks like that Pacific system may affect their weather over the next couple days. The Canadian Maritime's looking good. They do have alerts for tomorrow night into Friday for a significant freezing rain event in this area right here. Those warnings do not extend into Maine. The cities affected will be Fredericton, Moncton, Truro, and New Glasgow. Most of that will be overnight tomorrow night, followed by rain on Friday morning. We'll do a quick cross-section, and I'm going to show you that subtropical jet. That's it right there, up at about 200 millibars, maybe 250. You can see as we get over Georgia, it really picks up, getting some of those blues, which correspond to 170 to 180 knots. So a lot of the westbound flights are having to go a little bit low, down around 25,000 feet, so they don't get as much of a headwind. Anyway, not a whole lot else to show you. I don't want to go over this just for the sake of going over cross-sections, but I'm going to make you a compromise. I'm going to put a full set of the cross-sections, north-south and east-west, at the very end of the program, after the credits. So if you want that technical look and kind of scroll through and see what it's doing in your area, head to the end of the program. We have so many charts here and so much to cover, and one thing I'm trying to avoid is information overload. So what I want to do now is go into the forecast over the next few days and on into next week. So there's our moisture axis that's coming right up through North Carolina, some strong showers off of the coast there, and also some showers all the way up through Pennsylvania and into lower Ontario. And you can see this plateau high, that right there. See those 1040 millibar pressures? That is very dense, cold air trapped in the valleys. And I will go back to the cross sections for this one. I'm going to cut through, say, Salt Lake City, Twin Falls. Yeah, you see that right there? Packing of the isotopes. That's indicating an inversion with cold air trapped very close to the ground. And more of that going on all the way down into northern Arizona. And if we cut it through the other direction, east-west, see that I got that going right through southern Idaho. Southern Idaho is going to be located somewhere in here. You can see that cold dome right there. And above that, the isotopes bend downwards. That indicates warm air aloft, which is interesting. So we got cold air very close to the ground, warm air aloft. And that's a classic structure of a plateau high. The presence of that warm air helps to produce a sort of capping inversion and prevents vertical mixing. And if you look at those red isotherms, you can see them very slightly bumping upwards. That's a sign of warm air aloft. So there's your plateau high structure. The black lines, this is different from the cross sections. These are pressure lines, so don't get those confused. But what I'm showing you here, high pressure, they're kind of bumped upwards within that cold dome, and they're bumped up again within that warm high pressure area. And that's because we have an upper level ridge in place. If we go to the 500 millibar chart, you can see that ridging across that very same area. So that's in place because of warm air in the mid and upper levels, and warm air advection helping to maintain that ridge as well. And another thing helping to maintain that plateau high is recent snow on the ground. That's it right there, all across Idaho into Wyoming, parts of Nevada, and that insulates the air mass and helps it stay cold. So at nighttime it radiates into space, and we get rising pressures, falling temperatures, and that maintains that low-level high-pressure area. And of course, in the central U.S., we've got that low-pressure area starting to transition to a trough. You can see the frame before that. We did have a closed low, one implied right in there, but that's pretty much going away. Looks like the main baroclinic low is moving into Kentucky. And then this back here, that's the occluded area with the cold pool aloft. So going into the overnight hours, we see a coastal low developing off of New Jersey. That's probably what's going to be heading up into New Brunswick. Meanwhile, with that low opening up in the Midwest, we've got that cold pool on its way south. Because without that being a closed circulation, it's been replaced by northerly flow. So that's just going to shove the cold air southward. So some cold weather coming up over the next couple of days in parts of the southeastern U.S. And there it goes. And with those cold upper level temperatures, we're going to maintain those steep lapse rates. So conditions within the column will continue to be unstable, even with that low pressure area being mostly out of the picture. And then we're going to see that whole mess just kind of sink into the southeastern U.S. going into Friday. And there it is, departing the East Coast and replaced with a fresh outbreak of cold air on Saturday through the northern plains. And that dives very swiftly south all the way into Texas by Sunday. So another mild outbreak of cold air. Then going into next week, looks like the southern stream gets active. If you back away from this and look at the thickness, the red lines, the dashed red lines, you can see kind of a ribbon right through here. That's that southern stream starting to dominate the southern U.S. So with that cold air mass in place, we're getting some isentropic lift and some overrunning. Those pressure falls out there in New Mexico helping to get that pattern going. So it looks like some mixed precip possible in Oklahoma for midweek and rain in Texas. Anyway, that'll move quickly to the east and mostly affect Florida. And here comes another southern stream system. The model going for some snow around Tucson for Friday next week. And that moves into the Texas region. Rather substantial area of lift for Saturday on January 6th. And that's as far as these charts go. But you can see California definitely getting quite a bit of action. And a big cold air outbreak for the northeastern U.S. Okay, we've used up a full 18 minutes, so it's time to close this up. I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. And remember, at the very end of this program, you're going to get the full cross-section set. All right, we'll see you back here on Friday for another edition of Forecast Lab. Hope you have a great Wednesday night, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.